Good evening and welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chairman Nyman, can you start us off?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, first on the agenda, community announcements. So Marie and Diane, I have lured you guys here under false pretenses because if we told you what we were really planning on doing, neither one of you guys would have ever shown up. Which speaks to your selfless nature and why you guys are most deserving. In 1973, the two of you guys opened up a dance school. And over that time, you guys have taught well over 1,000 students. You guys are currently teaching second and third generations of dancers. You've taken 22 trips to New York City to compete. You've taught at the Youth Commission for over 10 years. You've participated in the Holiday Stroll since its inception. And during that the entirety of the time you've been a dance school over the last 50 years, it's always been about the kids. So with that, tonight, on behalf of the board, we are presenting you guys with the highest award that we can give as a Board of Selectmen, and it is the Town of Rockland, Rockland's Best Award. So, without any further ado, come on up. You guys have gone above and beyond and inspired generations of young girls and boys throughout the town of Rockland. And 50 years for any business is a special thing. You guys have always done it with the utmost class and always made the town proud.
It's about the kids.
It's always about the kids. So with that,
Thank you so much.
Love it.
When I saw my son across the street.
okay. I wasn't sure. Everybody was quiet for so long about it.
While you're standing, feel free to go. It's a long meeting. You won't offend us. Yeah, you're welcome to stay.
There you go.
Don't feel obligated.
I know how to clear a room.
Congratulations.
Even on the way here, she was like, something weird happening. I was like, I don't know.
Surprise.
See you guys.
Bye. That was awesome.
Yeah. 50 years. That's impressive.
And they survived COVID.
Yeah, everything. Something I said?
I know.
Look at that room. Unbelievable. I guess we're good. All right, next on the agenda, Town Cleanup Day. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. We have a number of volunteers that are helping with the town cleanup, and we have Kathy Kirby and Donald Can here, and I think they'd like to come up and say a few words about it.
Thank you.
Kathy, welcome. Donald, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry we're getting more back.
We're getting more.
More people, more volunteers. Should I sit?
By all means, whatever makes you comfortable, Kathy.
Oh, I'm good standing up.
Fair enough.
Good, so, okay. Cleanup time, people. Spring cleanup this year, town-wide, is April 15th. That's a Saturday. No, your taxes are not due that day. 9 o'clock sign in front of the town offices. The park department, Home Depot, the highway department, everybody's on board. Home Depot will be supplying gloves, plastic, and hopefully paper bags this year. I'd like to try to cut down on the plastic. And I think maybe especially for younger kids, just carrying a paper bag and picking up light trash rather than trying to wield one of those big plastic bags might be easier. Donald and I took a walk on Saturday from Liberty Street to the Hanover line, and it's pretty bad for about the first quarter of a mile down that way. I did Plain Street to Union Street, which has been fairly good recently, but was not when I went there the other day. So Other parts of town that we've done, the town forest, Hearts of Park, and we may want to add McCarthy Farm to that as the date gets closer to April 15th. You know, we have, go out and survey to let people know where to disperse. What else? Oh, yes. I don't know where the camera is. Bring your helpful tools, your grabbers. If you have claw rakes, maybe just a few times. They're very good for getting into difficult places and getting out, especially if you have to deal with something that might be sharp. Home Depot is supplying adult gloves. If you have younger children, please make sure that they have child-size hand gloves. And I was just informed today about a site, Keep Mass Beautiful, and I'm going to see about getting our cleanup registered on that site because they keep track of the towns that do cleanups, so we certainly want to be credited with our efforts because it's been going on for some time now. So we're just looking for your okay.
What number year, Kathy?
What,
What number year is this?
that we've been cleaning
Yeah,
up?
you guys have been doing, as,
Well, Donald just asked me that, and so the trail was originally constructed in 2010,
Yeah.
and he says we've been doing it since then.
No, he sent.
But now we're working with, the past 3 years, we've been working with Reimagine Rockland.
Yeah.
And we're really partners, and instead of just doing the rail trail, we're expanding it as far as we can as a town cleanup.
Yeah. And if people know of other places other than those that have been mentioned, let us know.
And we've picked up, I suppose, tons of stuff all that time, 23 years.
I'm sure.
Yep.
Obviously, there's probably going to be more information to come as we get closer to the date, as far as where people should meet on that day, or what time specifically. Should
In front of the
hall,
town
in front of the house.
offices,
Okay.
9 a.m. is sign-in.
Yep.
Organizers will be here at 8:30 to try to get things ready, get the paperwork set up and all of that, so if you want to come 15 minutes early. Somebody usually brings donuts.
I've heard that.
So if you want to grab one of those. If you came a little early, that might work too.
Perfect.
And I would also say that Boys Scouts and the Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls and organizations like that have been a big part of this. And also, we've signed off over the years community service requirements for high school kids and conservation, confirmation kids as well. It really turned into a community event that people like.
You guys have done a great job with it. With that, entertain a motion to approve April 15th.
I have a suggestion before that. I've had this idea for years. I walk the rail trail most mornings, and my sister-in-law and I clean up. We go uptown, up to Hanover, and we come back the next day, and it's just as messy. So I first like to encourage people, always throw your trash away, the public service announcement. And I'm wondering with the cleanups, if we can offer a prize to kids 12 or under who bring in the most trash.
Wow.
Well,
Might
that has
encourage-
been done.
Has it? Yeah.
A certain restaurant has done that in the past, but the cleanups it wasn't this formal cleanup. They were doing it, and if the kids brought their trash there, I think they got a gift certificate. I'm not sure of the prize, but they did have a prize. And
That's an
yep,
interesting.
that's a good thing, but I think you need a restaurant or a backer to do that. At this point, we don't have one.
Maybe we can squeeze money out of our budget. I don't know. To offer that. We can talk about it, I guess.
Okay, good
Okay.
idea. Thank you.
So do I have a motion to approve the date?
Motion.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Yep.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
job.
guys.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Art Unboxed Initiative now accepting applications. Jen?
Thank you, Mike. So I'd like to just announce, at long last, a public art project initiative here in Rockland, Art Unboxed. And this will be the painting of a series of utility boxes throughout town. I believe there are 8 in total. Applications are currently out. They can be found on the town website under the Recreation Department's link. They are due March 15th Artists can submit up to 2 proposed designs. Awards will be announced on or about April 1st, no sooner than April 1st. And this is in collaboration with the rec department. I also want to thank Dave Taylor for his efforts on this project as well. And it should be exciting. It'll be a nice addition here in town. And the boxes are located along Union Street, but they're also kind of sprinkled throughout various parts of town. So that is it in a nutshell. Don't know if there are any questions.
Any questions?
It's gonna be amazing.
It should be fun.
Yeah.
Who
It
will
be fun.
approve the applications?
We are putting together, who will approve them? Is
Yeah.
that the question? We're gonna put together a committee, I believe myself, somebody from the rec department. We will have one artist on the selection committee, Dave Taylor, because he's familiar with the locations and the boxes themselves. And that's the committee so far.
Oh, nice. Looking forward to it. It's a great idea.
Okay, sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
So before I go any further, I'm not sure if I read this in the beginning, but just please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded for playback by WRPS at youtube.com/WRPS Rockland. Please go to WRPSRockland.com for further information. Next on the agenda, minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve minutes from February 7th, 2023.
Motion to approve the minutes from February 7th, 2023.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Next on the agenda, new business, proposed 5K road race fundraiser for Rockland veterans. Article 15 Brewing Company, 406 VFW Drive. Leo, want to come up?
So, in an effort to start our charity move since we've been here in Rockland, we wanted to try and do a fundraiser for the Rockland Veterans Foundation. Obviously, being a veteran-owned business, it's kind of near and dear to our heart. So, we came up with the idea with actually with Sergeant Novio's daughter, who works for us, with the idea of doing a 5K in town. So, a little bit of effort. We figured out a route at this point. I believe we've gotten approval from both police and fire as far as the route at this point. We've got a couple of food trucks laid on. We have plans. We have a bunch of volunteers already laid in to help us that day with both parking at our site as well as along the route for handing out water and like refreshments and stuff like that. There's going to be a water point at the halfway mark, as well as when they return back to the brewery. And that's about what we have laid on at this point.
Okay, anybody have any questions, concerns, comments?
Did you say when it was? Sorry.
Yeah,
I
it's
missed that.
actually April 15th, that
April.
same day. It's going to be a 10 a.m. start.
Okay. Are there sponsors?
Right now, it's just us.
How is it?
Yeah,
All right. Maybe, but.
good idea if we can get a couple. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good idea for sure.
Sounds like a great idea, and I'd encourage my colleagues on the board to participate in the 5K as well. Not in?
Well, that's a trap, because I challenged you last time, and I was the only one that showed up, so.
You'd be surprised how motivated you are when you finish with beer. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
That'll motivate
I'll be
him.
cleaning up the rail trail then.
Okay, anybody have any other questions or challenges? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Article 15 5K road race for Rockland veterans on April 15th at 10 a.m.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank
Thank you guys very much.
All right, next on the agenda, proposed new fire station building project.
Hey, Mike, before we do that, I was just thinking, because Mr. Guard is here for the billboard, and
Okay.
I suspect that's going to be
Yep,
pretty
sure.
quick. Do you mind maybe moving
Yep,
up
we can
and
skip
say
that.
now?
Yep.
All right, good. If I can do a quick intro
Yep.
while Steve's popping up. So as the board remembers and as the public remembers, we have a billboard overlay district that hovers around Route 3. And the board solicited proposals, received 2 proposals. We picked the one that we thought was best for the town. And Mr. Guard here represents the property owner and the developer. They've received all their local permits, all their permits from the town, they're all set, but they do need approval from the Mass Department of Transportation Office of Outdoor Advertising, and as I've kept the board up to date, unfortunately, Mass DOT has not made a decision on their application, it's just pending. I've personally reached out to them several times to ask what their time frame is, what their timeline is. They have none, and they're not shy about saying they don't have any time frame. And when pressed, there's apparently no law or regulation that requires them to act within a certain amount of time. So we've been pushing as aggressively as we can just to have them make a decision, so we and the applicant knows where they stand. We've worked with our state rep and our state senator. I've put some of their correspondence in there where they've been pressing as well. Again, not to try to improperly coerce them to rule what we think is in our favor, but just to make a decision one way or the other so we can move forward. So given that they have not, and it's still in this state of limbo, the applicant has asked for another extension in their host community agreement. While it was originally not envisioned that we would do another extension because everybody thought we'd have an answer by now, given the situation, I think it's reasonable to grant another extension, and that's just sort of some of the background, unless Mr. Gard has any more to fill in.
Not really, Doug, you nailed it all. So Doug's been working with us tirelessly to get political support to push forward for them to make a decision and to support the location and the billboard for the town of Rockland. The first extension was, it's allowed under the host community agreement as far as the applicant, as long as the applicant gave notice. So this is really the first discretionary extension by the board, of course, but yeah, it's unfortunate. We have tried. We're reaching out almost weekly, maybe every other week, to John Romano, the director of Mass DOT Outdoor Advertising. We have other contacts which we've worked to try to push it along and contact the engineers directly to get a decision, but everybody just keeps pointing the finger. And there's been some administration changes, as you know. There's a new secretary, and there's no in-house counsel, is what we're being told. So a lot of these permits are being held up because of staffing changes, and John's not, he's just not really capable of making the decision at this time. So we ask your cooperation and patience with us. We are still fully committed to the board, of course, and would like to see the project through.
So currently, your extension runs through March 15th. You're looking to have another extension through July 15th?
Yeah. We figure that, hopefully that works, and if it comes in sooner, then great. But, it's on or before kind of thing. Once we get that, we're good to go. But the applicant, as Doug mentioned, has met every deadline that has been before us. We've done everything that we can do to meet the host community agreement standards, and we're at the mercy of the state at this point.
Any comments, questions?
Yeah, as a reminder, Doug, can you explain the benefits to Rockland of having this electronic billboard on the overlay district?
Yeah, so the major benefit to the town is money. So there's part of the host community agreement, there's an annual payment which actually increases over time, and I forgot the exact terms. It was a long-term agreement.
50 years.
Yeah, so there's a significant recurring revenue stream to the town. That's the major benefit. Between the two proposals, the other site was what I'll call this side of the highway, the Home Depot side of the highway, that was closer to a residential neighborhood. The chosen selection does not abut any residential neighbors, and it's a more industrial site, which would be better from everyone's perspective. And also, this applicant was offering more in revenue to the town than the other proposer.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out, so when people come up to me and say, we don't want a billboard up in Rockland, they can,
I forget, 60 grand a year, I think it is.
Right.
You add it up over 50 years, I want to say my client calculated with the increment.
It's like 7 million.
How much, 4 million, 5 million?
Yeah, I think it was about 7.
Is it? It's a
Yeah.
lot of money. It's a lot.
And I think, Lloyd, to your point, as far as any potential criticism, hopefully when this gets built, if there's any criticism, again, the zoning was approved by town meeting years ago
Yes.
to allow one billboard, and we're restricted to only one, but this zoning bylaw passed by 2/3 of town meeting to allow it, so voters have
Okay.
spoken in that regard.
okay, very good.
It's nice, and there's also advertising opportunities, there's public service announcements that the board does for the town as well. So it's nice passive income for the town. And there's no maintenance requirements on the client takes care of everything.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. It's not any fault of the client, or the applicant rather, I should say, in this case. It's just the speed of government, or lack thereof at this point. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the extension to July 15th.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second,
Motion and a second, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
got it.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys do. No
I
problem.
appreciate your crew.
Okay, next on the agenda, proposed new fire station building project. Chief Duffy.
Good evening, Board. Come to you tonight with hopefully final presentation before town meeting. and town election to get the fire station on the ballot. We have our architects with us that have been diligently designing the station, getting us ready for the zoning board of appeals special permit process, which we've just completed. So yes, here is our presentation. Just as a quick outline, just quick do introductions, the need of the project, some of the outreach that we've done, the very preliminary design of the building, the projected budget. Doug's going to go over that, and the financing, what our next steps are for the project itself, then any questions and answers you may have. So with us tonight is, not with us, some are with us, some are not, the Fire Station Building Committee. This is a group that's been appointed by you that have done an incredible amount of work in this project. Their ideas have been awesome. And really, we wouldn't have been able to get this far without their input. Deputy Chief Tom Heaney, Lieutenant Charlie Williams, who's also a town resident, retired Chief James Killinger, town resident, architect Christopher DeFilippo. Chris and I went to high school together, and just knowing his architectural background, I asked him to be on the committee. Rec Director Jean Blaney and Susan Tasker from the Highway Department, also part of the Rec Committee, is also on the board. Our design team from Schwartz and Silver Architects, John Traficante, Kelsey Laser, and Stuart Marshall. And they've done an incredible job. Just as a background, as a sub-consultant or a consultant to Schwartz and Silver, we had Bob Mitchell did the Firematic programming. He's like an expert in fire stations, award-winning architect himself. He was a big help in helping lay out the layout of the building and what should go next to what. So I'm just gonna briefly, because I know I've been to you before this, why we need a new station. Current station built in 1939 with a 1978 addition. It's just too small, too tight. You've all been in it, and I appreciate that. All the trucks that we're buying now, they're much bigger. Nobody would have expected that they would, but they keep getting bigger. And then sleeping quarters. Sleeping quarters, we have firefighters, pretty much sleeping in two big open bunk rooms, within 6 feet of each other. That was a problem when it came to COVID, making sure, people were social distanced. Lack of room for equipment. Our turnout gear is a big one. It sits out in the middle where all the trucks are, gathering dust, diesel, and dirt, as well as it's off-gassing itself. The gear itself, we can clean it, but there's better ways to be doing that, and a new station would help us accommodate that. And then we just don't have training room, whether it be classroom training or being able to go out and do practical training with the trucks, hoses, ladders. We just don't have room on our current site to do that. We get it done, and we've made friends with many neighbors and businesses throughout town that allow us the use of their parking lots, and we thank them. And then currently, the site is already too small for parking. We have no visitor parking, and at shift change, we still have personnel parking in the streets. So it's always the, changing cars game at shift change. You've all seen these pictures. I'm really not gonna go through them. Just some of the tougher points of the station that I've shown you in the past and that I just discussed. Outreach that we've done so far. Back in June, we did an abutter outreach meeting. We sent letters to all the abutters of 99 Church Street. We had 10 to 12 people come up. It was a good meeting. And got to meet with them, hear their concerns of, would they want a station, would they not? And I think we answered a lot of their questions for them. Doug and I did his TA, I forget it already, Doug, I'm sorry.
Right there, Q&A.
The TA Q&A, that's right, I know. Horrible, right?
Got canceled after one episode.
I'm not a marketing person, so Doug
Canceled
just,
after one episode. Unbelievable.
oh, really?
I haven't seen it since.
It was probably my fault.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
The
we
ratings
did
are
the-
so bad. Unbelievable.
We did the TA Q&A, and that was actually fun, I'll say. But again, just explaining the needs of the station and what we could expect with the new station. November, we did another public outreach meeting. We did that over at the high school, very well attended, and I think we were able to get more answers, hear more concerns from the public, which, we've addressed with them. And then back in January, we went to the ZBA. We had a public hearing for that, for the special permit requirement. And then coming up, we'll also have everything that we've done and filmed in reports on the town website and various social media outlets. And you can see, this is the town website here. And then if you go under the fire station, under the fire department, there will be a link for all of this. In the preliminary design, I'll pass this off to whichever, one of the architects. Kelsey, John, Stuart, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
So I'll do a quick introduction on our firm, and then ask Kelsey and Scott to kind of go through the preliminary design. Schwartz Silver's been around since 1980, and civic projects are a big part of our work and our firm's work. Our first fire station was the Wellesley Fire Station and Headquarters Building. It's on Route 9 in Wellesley. It was done finished in the early 90s, so over 30 years ago. It was our first station. More recently, we've done the Newton Fire Department in Newton Center. That's Fire Station 3 and a headquarters building. And then even more recently, the Walpole Station, which was completed just before COVID. And as Scott mentioned, we work in the last 2 fire stations that we've worked very closely, actually the last 3, we've worked very closely with Bob Mitchell Associates. He's a New York architect who's done over 100 fire stations and really very good at programming. So early on the program, make sure the rooms are the right size, the right adjacencies and such. Also isolating kind of hot and cold zones in the plan, so we understand where contaminated areas are, where the warm zone, transitional zones, and where kind of a safer zone is in the plan. It's really important. I will also just mention that we, during that kind of programming effort with Bob Mitchell, we, as part of that programming and conceptual design, we looked at 3 separate sites and kind of set up a chart where we had pros and cons. Reds are kind of red flags, things that prevent us from going to that site. Yellow are things that is maybe a concern but can be overcome. And then green obviously are things that are advantageous. So we looked at the current fire station site, we looked at the McKinley School site at the time, and then we looked at this Church Street site. And when we did the study back in 2017-18, we determined that the Church Street site was, of these 3 sites, was much preferred. So kind of with that, I'll pass it along to Kelsey to kind of walk through the plans.
Yeah, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Lincoln School site at 99 Church Street. This is a site plan that was developed with our landscape architect, Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture. And you can see that on the left-hand side, which is south, is the parking lot, which has spaces for the fire department and public visitors. Then kind of in a buffer zone between the parking lot and the building is a fenced-in area that will house the communications tower and generator. We have a building that has a relatively large footprint of, I think, around 23,000 square feet. And then we have a landscape buffer to the bottom of the page, which is east on Howard Street, where we're proposing some new trees and plantings to kind of shield the building a little bit and create a little bit of a kind of public accessible workspace. We have an apron onto Church Street where we have 6 apparatus bays that will allow all of the fire department fleet vehicles to be able to pull fully out onto the apron without intruding into Church Street, which I know is an issue with their current apron at the current station. And then at the top of the page is the exterior area that's behind the fire station that allows for one pull-through bay, and then also provides space for outside training with the vehicles where there's a stair tower that trucks can be backed up to for training with the ladder. This is the first floor plan, where you can see the delineation between the hot zones, which are zones where we have vehicle exhaust, and then the transitional buffer warm zones, and then cold zones where we don't want any exhaust fumes getting into places like the offices and living quarters for the station. We worked very closely with Bob Mitchell to make sure that all of these spaces are sized correctly, everything has the right adjacencies. We tried to shrink the footprint as much as was feasible by keeping everything that really needs to be on the first floor is on the first floor, and everything that we were able to lift up above that is up on the second floor. And so the second floor is primarily the firefighter living space with the bunking rooms and some additional office space. And then these were some renderings we prepared. Stuart, were you gonna?
Yeah, this gives you a sense, and again, this is a preliminary design, to give you a sense of some of the things that we've done to fit the fire station into the neighborhood. Anything that we can do is, as Kelsey said, we have a landscape buffer along Howard Street, and we've really worked to push the building back from Howard Street at the first floor level, and then further at the second floor. Again, it is a second floor, a 2-story building. It's not a 3-story building, which would have brought it up to a height beyond the zoning envelope, but also really inappropriate for the neighborhood. Now, some of the other things that we do to try and keep the scale, the appearance of the scale of the building down, is looking for ways to articulate the facades that can help break it down. So you can see in that sort of overhead shot and the view in the top right and bottom right, how we've broken up the facade into independent gable pieces that give it a little bit more of a residential scale. We've also looked, though, for materials and for inspiration from nearby buildings in the vicinity. Some of the old historical industrial buildings where you can introduce brick, and the roof monitors that you can see that are elements. You can see in the top left of that lower right photo, there's an image of, you could see the sandpaper factory, which is a building that's been repurposed. I think it's artist studios and housing and mixed development. So on our roof, you're seeing roof monitors that we can use to let light into the back of the apparatus bays particularly. That's what would be most useful. And also can provide double duty as supporting solar panels in the future. I think we will design this as a net zero ready building, something that can be structured and have the infrastructure, the conduit to support solar panels on the roof that really could have this as a net zero facility in the future. Construction costs, so this is construction costs in the top line. Working with our cost estimators who have recently been finding that fire stations are coming in around $800 a square foot. And that was true going through the pricing exercise for this station. So that's a 26.8 million number. And then grossing that up with soft costs up to a total of $5 million of soft costs. That's including architecture and engineering design services, an owner's project manager to manage the project for the town. And then additional testing and furniture, fixtures and equipment. That brings the total, well, with an owner's contingency of 1.4 million, that brings the total up to 33 million, just over 33 million. So that's total project cost.
Thanks, John, Stuart, and Kelsey, I appreciate it. So I did try to warn the board a couple weeks ago that the number was going to be bigger than what I was previously alluding to, so the cat is out of the bag. So as far as financing options, we've talked about this a little bit before, but I'll reiterate it again. We do have a very strong bond rating. It's a AA stable. We will get rated again if we proceed with this project and are successful at the ballot and town meeting, but I would anticipate our bond rating would remain strong at a AA stable. Unfortunately, there are not grants for these types of projects. We've talked about it before, but the question keeps coming up, so I would just want to be super clear about it. There have been bills pending in the state legislature for many years to create a public safety building program like there are for schools and libraries, but the program just doesn't exist yet. So unfortunately, what that means is for these types of projects, it involves a debt exclusion. So a debt exclusion, again, just to remind folks, it's something that requires both a Proposition 2.5 vote at the ballot, which is just a simple majority vote at the ballot, and a 2/3 vote at town meeting. So what that does is it's a vote by taxpayers to raise their taxes, excuse me, above the normal Proposition 2.5 annual increment. But the key part of a debt exclusion, unlike a regular operational override, is that it's temporary. It's only in place during the life of the bond. Once the bond is paid off, that tax increase goes away. So this is probably the most important slide, and there's a lot of information here, so I will try to go slowly. So I know the most important thing that voters are going to want to know is how much is it going to cost, and how much is it going to cost me, the individual taxpayer. Most of the feedback we've received so far has been everyone agrees we need a new station. We really haven't heard anybody argue that we don't need it. The question really that I've heard is, can folks afford it? So I try to be as clear as we can here about what we're projecting, and I want to be very clear, these are just projections. There's a lot of assumptions. Certainly one of the biggest assumptions will be, what does the actual bid come in at? Maybe it'll come in at less than 33.2 million, we don't know, but for this exercise, I assumed 33.2 million exactly as the cost. I assumed our bond rating stays the same. Unfortunately, interest rates have increased. We've all seen that in the economy, and I don't see it changing materially in the next year or two when we would go out to bond. So I'm assuming, based on the input I've received from our financial advisors, 4 to 5% interest rate for a 30-year term, and it's structured for the most part as level debt payments, which is, think of it like a fixed home mortgage. And so what I'm showing here on these charts are for the average single-family home. So in Rockland today, the average value of a single-family home is $446,925. So if your house was valued at more than that, if you have a $600,000 house, your impact is going to be greater than what's shown on this chart. And if your home is only valued at $350,000, it'll be less than that. I'll note that if the board does decide to move forward with this project tonight, I'm working with our IT director to put a calculator on the homepage of the town website so people can punch in their own value and see their exact number. So again, what this chart shows is starting in FY24, which is when we would begin this project, and I want to again preface this by saying all of this is contingent on successful ballot and town meeting vote. So if that happens, there's smaller expenses in the beginning, because that involves just the architect and owner's project manager's time for finalizing design, finalizing bid documents, things like that. So it's lower costs in the beginning, then they quickly kind of ramp up as you get into FY25 and 26, and then the bulk of it, the 26 years or so in FY27 to 53, it's essentially flat. It varies between $328 and change and $329 and change, so I just rounded it to the midpoint at $329. So if I focus on that middle section, the FY27 to FY53 time period, because that's really the bulk of it, what this shows is the annual tax increase for an average single-family valued home at $446,925, the annual tax increase is $329. Quarterly, it's obviously $82.25. You can see the monthly number, it's about $1 a day. So again, I know this is going to be the question most frequently asked. Again, it's not going to be precise to the penny. There's a lot of variables that are going to involve the actual interest rates, the actual bid price, the actual cash flow. This involves certain assumptions, but this is a very good estimate that is right in the ballpark, and I think will give people a sense of what the cost will be for them. This slide shows our existing debt and our projected debt if we add on the fire station project. So on the left-hand axis, the y-axis on the left that's vertical, those are in thousands. So where you see in the beginning of 2023, it's nearly $7 million in annual debt service. And debt service, again, is the amount that the town pays for its bonds. It's like paying your mortgage. That's the debt payment. So you'll see there's a declining schedule. You see our debt dropping off pretty steeply, and then a pretty dramatic drop around 2034, 2035. So in that lighter shade, this adds on the fire station project, and again, it assumes generally level debt payments, so you can see the difference in the lines from the top of the dark shade to the top of the lighter shade is consistent. I drew a hash mark here to show if you go out to just after the start of 2033, you'll see we're actually right at the point we're at now. So what that means is in about 10 years, the debt load for a taxpayer is essentially going to be the same as we're at now, but they'll be getting a new fire station. And you'll see the debt, you see the whole term of the debt. So again, I've talked a bit about what those next steps are. So assuming the board agrees to put it on the ballot and on the town meeting warrant, and if it's approved, our next steps, as Stuart mentioned earlier, would be to hire an owner's project manager. It's not only an important thing to do, it's required by law for projects this size. Owner's project manager is just what it says. It represents the owner, so that can't be the architect and it can't be the contractor. So it's someone that represents the town, protects the town's interest, and makes sure that we're being fairly represented. And in my experience, while again we do have a placeholder in there for what it will cost, they pay for themselves over and over with efficiencies in the project. So we'll hire an OPM, the architect will finalize their design, create the construction documents, go out to bid. It's the typical design bid build that's required under state law. Hopefully we get a bid that's within our budget, and then the construction will be overseen by the project manager and the architect. And then as far as the timeline goes, I'm only going to refer to this generally. The architect can speak in more detail, but you'll see the time frame for town meeting and the vote. A couple months for schematic design, a few more months for design development, then we get into a little bit longer period to do the documents for construction. We go out to bid, and then if all goes according to plan, summer, fall of 2024 is when construction would begin, and by the spring or summer of 2026 is when the building would be complete and open for business. And I should highlight that all that we're talking about tonight is getting your approval to put this before voters to construct the new building. We've intentionally we're not asking for anything tonight or at town meeting or the ballot regarding the existing station. My recommendation on that would be if we get approval for this, that could be a future town meeting discussion. And I've made no secret in the past, I'll say it again, my recommendation will be that we would seek authorization from town meeting to sell the fire station, redevelop it for some type of mixed-use development, which would help continue to improve the economy on Union Street, put it back on the tax rolls. The sale, the income we receive from selling that fire station can directly offset the debt expense of this new building, and it'll lower the cost to taxpayers. But again, that's not something that I'm recommending for now. That decision can wait until later. There's no rush. This project is going to take a couple of years. So this is really the last substantive slide and the most important one, because this wording is very critical, and I've had it approved by town council. So once we're done with questions and answers, this is the exact wording that I'm requesting that you agree to put on the ballot. And for folks in the audience or at home watching, they'll notice that there's no dollar amount included in this. It doesn't say 33.2 million. That's because state law requires it to be written this way. You don't know the exact costs, whether it's the bid price, but especially costs for borrowing, interest, and all the related expenses. In the town meeting warrant article, that the dollar amount will be in there. So it's not a blank check. If people vote this at the ballot, we could spend $200 million on a station. It doesn't work like that. The town meeting warrant article will limit us to a dollar amount, and that's just the exact way it was done for the school building project. So that should be familiar to folks. And you'll see it just talks about allowing to go beyond Prop 2.5 to construct, equip, and furnish a new fire station at 99 Church Street, including the demolition of the Lincoln School. I know I went kind of quickly. We're here for any questions and answers, and I'm happy to go back to any earlier slides if you'd like.
Any questions or comments from the board? Karen?
I had a couple of comments. You know, another factor I keep repeating in the meetings I've been to and presentations I've been to about the fire station is to consider the expenses we won't have to pay for anymore that we're spending because we have an antiquated building. And also ideally the repurposing the station with keeping in mind revitalizing the uptown. That whole initiative is probably the smartest thing that we can do with it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Lori. And, you know, we're going to continue to work on, you know, what the operational kind of efficiencies are with a new building.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated because on the one hand, with the current station, just all the physical infrastructure repairs is just throwing good money after bad in a building, as the chief said, is too small and has all those deficiencies that just can't be fixed. So that's one issue. There's also, of course, outdated heating and, you know, cooling and all kinds of other systems. The new building, as Stuart said, will have, you know, will be equipped to be able to accommodate solar, will have the latest, most efficient mechanical systems, but it will also be a significantly larger building.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of per square foot, it'll be a lot lower cost, but we haven't exactly calculated, you know, the exact increase or decrease net because it will be a larger building. But that's something we'll certainly look at. But
Yeah.
it's safe to say, and the chief can jump in if he disagrees, you know, if we don't come up with a solution like this, if we're forced to stay in the building we're at, we're gonna have to throw a lot of money at our current building. So it's not like the alternative is zero or free. That's
Right.
not the case. We're gonna have to invest a lot of money in a building that will still be completely inadequate.
Yeah, and solar credits are a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, that's another thing that can kind of allay the debt. Anyway, all right, that's it.
I just had a question. Has anyone reached out to Representative DeCoste or Senator Keenan about funding from the legislature? I know when we built the senior center over there, my mother was pretty instrumental when she was a state rep in obtaining money from the state legislature for that project. So
Yeah, I've spoken to them quite a bit, more so about creating a state building program. That's been more of my focus, but we'll definitely, you know, if you guys agree to put it on the ballot and the warrant, we'll certainly reach out. I think on the senior center project, that was so much smaller, and you know, so I think an individual line item had a pretty large impact. But with a $33 million project, I'm not sure if we can get the same proportional piece, but we will leave no stone unturned.
Any amount.
Any amount will
would help.
Yeah.
Of course.
I just want to also thank Chief Duffy, yourself, and the committee and the design team for being here and all the work you've put into this. This has been a long time coming. When I was first elected in 2018, the chief was one of my first phone calls. He said, "Hey, when are you available to come tour the fire station?" I had been in there multiple times growing up and, you know, around town, but it's been a long time coming and it's definitely needed. So I am fully in support of putting this on the ballot and letting the residents decide, but I hope they will be in favor as well because we owe it to all the employees that work in that building and respond to our calls on a daily basis. So.
You've mentioned that you guys have had several community outreach sessions. What has been the general overall feedback from the residents? Any specific concerns on it?
The residents has been had a little bit of shock at, you know, the current condition of the station, in that, you know, nobody is doubting that we need a new station. A lot of the feedback is money. You know, why now? Can we delay it? Which, you know, brings us into a whole nother issue of if we delay it, costs are typically going to go up, and I'm sure the architect from Schwartz, so can, speak much better than I could on that, but most of the question is, do we need it now? And it's because of money.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, I mean, you just said it, it's never going to be cheaper than it is today. The cost will only ever go up. So my thought is, if this is the best deal, obviously, Doug, continue to follow up with the legislature and see if there's anything that can be done. I mean, I know you've already done your due diligence on that, but new administration, maybe new policies, new ideas and stuff like that, so we'll see what happens. But it's always been my thought is it's not up to us whether or not we want the project personally or not. It's always whether or not we think it's something that warrants consideration by the residents of the town. And I think at this cost, obviously, over the years, it's changed somewhat significantly since it first came to us. But obviously, a lot of things have happened. COVID happened, and costs all across the globe went up. So to that point, like I said, it'll never be cheaper than it is right now. And I think it's time we find out what the residents want. And I think I'll entertain a motion to put it on the warrant. To put it to town meeting. I'm sorry, town election on the ballot. So if somebody's to make a motion, if they want to read that ballot question.
Okay, I'll make the motion. For the ballot question vote, I'll just read it. Shall the town of Rockland be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued in order to construct, equip, and furnish a new Rockland fire station located at 99 Church Street, which will include the demolition of the Lincoln School and all associated site work and infrastructure?
The motion is to put that ballot question on the ballot.
Right.
I have a
Second.
motion. I have a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Let's find out what the residents want.
Thank you very much, and I also want to add that now that we have that support, we're going to continue working with the design team. We're going to have more public outreach sessions as they refine things a little bit more. We have greater level of detail than we had at earlier sessions, and we'll be putting more information out on the website. And the chiefs talked about doing kind of small, setting time aside at a coffee shop or at the station or at the senior center and let people ask questions. I may join in for some of those, so we'll continue to do as much outreach as possible. And if anybody from the public has questions, feel free to see the chief, feel free to see me here at Town Hall, and if we don't have the answers, we'll get them from the experts.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
All right.
Thanks to everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Somebody raising their hand.
That's it. I didn't see it. Okay, next on the agenda, announcement of successor collective bargaining agreement, Police Patrol Union, New England Police Benevolent Association, Inc., Local 65. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, as we've done with all our union contracts, once they are negotiated and ratified by the group, we comply with state law and announce a summary of that for the public. So there are two unions in the police department. There's Patrol and Superior, so I'm only speaking tonight about the Patrol Union. And it's very similar to some of the other contracts in town where it's a 3-year deal, 2.5%, 2.5%, and 2% wage increase in each of the 3 years. The most significant change in this contract is an agreement from the union to remove the department from civil service. We've talked about that a bit before. That's going to greatly help our ability to hire good qualified applicants that meets the needs of Rockland, and also help us deal with disciplinary items or issues. Instead of having to go through civil service, we'll have our own internal process that we will be coordinating with the union so that we're all on the same page. In lieu of that, or maybe not in lieu of, but in exchange for pulling out of civil service, we've agreed to fully fund what is often euphemistically referred to as the full Quinn bill. This is education incentives for officers. So what we will be now increasing what were flat dollar amounts. It will go up to 10% increase for an associate's degree, 20% for a bachelor's, and 25% for a master's degree. And the reason for that is There's evidence that really proves that the more educated police officers are, the better they perform and the less likelihood there is of bad incidents happening like you see in other parts of the country that you generally don't see in more educated departments like here in New England. So we're very pleased to have the patrol contract on. That's all I have on that item.
Okay, perfect. And it was received well by the officers in the union? Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, Rockland Boards, Committees, and Commissions Handbook, January 2017 discussion. Okay, so I wanted this on the agenda for tonight. I was under the thought process that we would have a full board. So really what I would ask is something that we've talked about quite a bit over the years. And one of the things that I suggested, to people that were going to the MMMA conference, if you saw something that that would benefit the town of Rockland in a sense of, specific, ways in which to conduct yourself as a board or a committee, then it'd be great for us to review. So in the packet that came out, there is a committee rules and whatever as far as manner in which a board would conduct themselves from the town of Auburn, Massachusetts. So we're not going to, really get into too much of a discussion tonight because the other members aren't here. But if you guys could take it back and take a look at it, and if there's anything that you guys want to, redline and take out, then try to get it to Doug sometime in the next couple of weeks, and maybe we can get it onto an agenda for our next meeting. We can discuss it in more depth and possibly come away with a vote. It's really, I think, one of those things that, as we've always said, the Board of Selectmen should be the ones to set the example as far as how we conduct ourselves in public and how we conduct ourselves as a board or committee in a meeting. So I think it's an important step that we really sign off on something a little bit less vague than the boards, committees, and commissions handbook. So just take that, and I'll reach out to Tiffany and Donna and just let them know what the assignment will be for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I have none.
Okay, old business, FY24 budget. Doug?
So I don't really have an update on that tonight. I was hoping we'd have some updated information from the state, but we don't, so no budget update tonight.
Okay, next on the agenda, May 1st, 2023, town meeting warrant.
Thanks, Mike. So I did include in your packet the latest draft of my town meeting warrant article list, and I cleaned it up by listing it in generally kind of the order that I would think would make the most sense for the warrant. I've just removed a number of different articles that, as I've been continuing to meet both with town council and with all the department heads, there were some things that were on the list previously that is still something I think we might want to pursue, but some, for example, might involve like a zoning bylaw change where there's just not time to follow the process properly. So I won't go through and read every single one of these, but just generally it starts with the special town meeting.
Doug, can I interrupt you for
Sure.
1 second? Chief, do you mind just popping that door open just a little bit? I don't think they're in the hallway anymore, but it's open meeting. Just want to make sure that people have access if they want to come in. Thank you. Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
No problem. So it starts with the financial articles, and then we get toward a number of sewer department articles, which are both drawing money from their own enterprise funds, as well as potentially, if the board agrees at your next meeting, some additional ARPA funds, and then a whole number of Abington Rockland Joint Waterworks, a number of water capital items. And I should note that since the time when I put this list together, I got an updated list of the water articles, which we did put in your packet. So you see, after this page and a half, there's another page that's the comprehensive list of water articles. So I'll incorporate that into my list. Community Preservation Act, then we have the articles for taking police and fire out of civil service. A number of other kind of smaller things. We've talked before about accepting the Mount Pleasant Cemetery and establishing cemetery commissioners, things like that. Some revolving fund cap changes. The one thing, I'm going to highlight two things I think now. One is, I don't have on this list, but we have talked before, Lori asked at the last meeting about a potential change to the charter to make it gender neutral, and I think Lori might have more to say on that tonight, but that's not included here pending what we discuss in a bit. But the one thing I did highlight in yellow is what I've labeled number 35, which I've mentioned at several prior meetings, which is a bylaw that would cap the number of marijuana dispensaries. So I really kind of need to know if that's something you want to pursue or not. There's no right or wrong answer here. Some towns, don't allow anything other than medical, which you're required to have a zone for. So some towns ban it outright. Rockland didn't. We're open for business. Again, as a reminder, we have 2 that are physically open. We have a 3rd that's going to be opening within the next couple of weeks, and a 4th that we have a host community agreement with, and they're fully permitted. So we essentially have 4. The concern that's been raised is the greater the number of dispensaries, we may not actually be bringing in any more money net. It might just be kind of cannibalizing from the other dispensaries' sales. So we may have more dispensaries, but everybody's revenue goes down because there's only so much to go around. That's a position that's been proposed. Again, there's no right or wrong answer on this. I'm okay either way. I just kind of need to know for preparing the warrant.
So I think based on, we did, I think at one point we were talking about discussing 5, but I think 4 would be appropriate at this point. But I wouldn't want to put a cap on the entire town. Right now we have one singular zone. We have one singular district that allows for the dispensaries. So I think if we put a cap on that district, but we allow that if somewhere down the line, years from now, if there is, another district to be created, we can create that district. But I think what we have right now, the 4 host community agreements that we have in place, I think it'd be appropriate to cap that district at 4.
So getting to that point, if I can, I think it's pretty straightforward because we have one district, so the cap is only going to affect that district. If in the future the town wants to add another district, then you can update the cap to be whatever.
But would the language have to say the town, or would it be more appropriate to say in the designated district? I'm just thinking from a language standpoint.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying.
Because it's not permitted anyplace else in the town.
Right.
Automatically. So
Right.
if somebody proposed it years from now,
Yeah.
then you
So
have that option.
I think it could be pretty simple. So right now we have one district. Let's just say hypothetically you wanted to set the cap at 4 for this district. So that's it. In the future, if the town creates another district, the town could update the bylaw and says, in this district the cap is 4, in that district the cap is 4, or whatever you want it to be. So I think in the future you can always change it.
Yeah, I think
to say whatever you'd like.
I'm all for it. I just think as long as just to leave the language open for greater interpretation, just so that people have a better understanding. Because what's going to end up happening, long after I'm gone and these guys are gone and maybe you're gone, somebody comes through and says, well, the town decided this and this is the reason why they decided it. I think I said it before. If somebody came through and wanted to open one on the Abington line, that's not necessarily affecting the business on the Hingham Street corridor. It's not affecting that business.
And that's a great example because I get that all the time. People call and say, oh, I want to do it in such and such location. I'm sorry, that's not zoned for that. You're not allowed to do it there. So that's an example where then there would need to be a zoning change if the town were going to allow that.
And then if
there
host
could be
community
a new
agreements go
cap.
away, then it's null and void anyway, because it's not really great anyway. But
And again, I don't mean to be pushy about
Yeah.
this. I just kind of need to know either way. I'm honestly fine either way. I guess if I had to really say one way or the other, I kind of like the idea of a cap just because what I worry about is if more and more dispensaries come forward with fully vetted, capitalized projects, we don't really have a leg to stand on to say, we're good for now because we're unlimited. And that's the first question I get asked when people call is, what's your cap? Do you have any slots available? And then I always tell the truth and say there is no cap. So far the market has kind of spoken, but I get inquiries all the time, so.
So what are your thoughts?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying about keeping the possibilities open for the future.
Yeah, I'll certainly show you the language if you want to go that way, because zoning is generally drafted not to be ambiguous and to not leave anything open-ended. It tries to be as precise as possible. But I think that the simplest answer to your point is, Mike, if anything ever changes in the future, the town can always amend its zoning bylaws, and it can always amend its general bylaws and increase the cap or add a new zone. Nothing ever prohibits the town. Zoning's never permanent forever, it's just until it gets changed.
Yeah. And another point is, you know, the biggest thing residents would like for, this is the feedback I get, is a grocery store in Rockland. So if we have like 8 pot shops and not a grocery store, what's that say? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I mean, I think as the district stands right now, I'd say, you know, 4 is probably, you know, a decent cap, and if one of them never opens, then that opens up for another applicant to come in, you know. But is there an expiration date on the host community agreement for the one that hasn't opened at all?
Yeah, just as you said that, I was thinking about that,
Yeah.
so I will follow up. I know that, I will follow up.
Because I think that was actually the original one.
Yep,
You know,
it's
I
been a
think that was
number of years.
over 6 years, like
Yeah.
5 years ago, that I think we signed that host community agreement, and we've seen nothing come from that
Right,
at all. I don't even know if they've started any kind of construction.
yeah. I don't think they have, but I will follow up on that.
Okay.
So is what I'm hearing consensus for yes at the current 4? Or,
Consensus?
I think so.
yeah, for this.
I think so. I'd put it on the warrant as such.
okay. And you can always change your mind by but I just didn't want to waste time doing it if
Right.
you're like, no, we're
Yeah.
not interested. So I'll work on this, and then when we review the language, you can
Okay.
look at it.
Well, I think it's one of those things too where, you know, we have, you know, a business come in regardless of what the business is, you want to give them an opportunity to succeed. And if we continue to permit the
Right.
exact same business, then none of those
That's
you
the
know, businesses
concern.
are going to be able to prosper. And then they're going to move out, and God knows what else will move in. Or I guess operators that are less qualified and less professional might potentially move in that we wouldn't necessarily have a say on. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Okay.
All right.
So that's, is there anything that you think I'm missing, or any concerns from your end? I mean, it's pretty straightforward
Should we,
in general.
the cemetery commissioners, you know, when we get to stuff like that, you know, I read through what Attorney Galvin had sent us about elected cemetery commissioners. Is that something that we really want to have as elected position? or do you
I'm
think
not
appointed?
recommending that, no.
So keep it
And
as
to be
appointed?
honest, one thing I want to consider, I'm going to talk to Attorney Galvin.
Just have the selectmen be it, I think.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
how many towns
Yeah.
either have the selectmen or a subcommittee of the selectmen.
So it had both uses of language in there, where it said an elected cemetery commission. I mean, we look around town, and we've got an election coming up, and I'm not sure if there's any opposed races.
Yeah.
So good luck getting somebody to jump onto the cemetery commissioners.
Right, yeah.
No,
You know?
I'm not recommending an
Okay.
elected board, and I'm leaning toward the selectmen if you guys agree.
Yep,
Okay.
okay.
So again, looks good so far? You're not seeing any
Yep.
issues? All right.
Yeah, I don't see
Great.
anything.
So our next meeting will be the last regular meeting before the warrant.
Are we hearing anything on the budget itself from the governor's office?
No, I'm really disappointed. It's the 21st,
Yeah.
and, you know, they promised that we'd have at least the local aid numbers, you know, several weeks before the March 1st date, and so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda, other old business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay, moving on, town administrator's report and correspondence, Doug.
Great, thank you, Mike. I have a few things tonight. First is, I know I've emailed you guys, but I just wanted to reiterate again for you and for the public, just that we've been working very hard here with the sewer commissioners, doing our best to work with them on the budget, on their town meeting warrant articles, and on procurement that they've had to do to hire contractors and engineers for their I&I work, which we might be funding more from ARPA, but even for the work that we've already done. So the chairman, Mr. Hessian, will be in at your next meeting on March 7th to talk about a potential funding request that'll help the sewer department stay in compliance with the EPA administrative order. So again, you know, a lot of things get said out in the public, but I can assure you we are working collaboratively for the greater good of the town. As Chief Duffy was mentioning earlier, my highly rated TA Q&A TV show will have a second edition coming up shortly. The week of March 6th, I'm going to be interviewing Crystal Cameron, the superintendent of the water department, along with one of the engineers from Weston and Sampson. We're going to ask all the questions that I think is on everybody's mind about water quality and PFAS and costs and all that. So I plan on doing that the week of March 6th, and it'll immediately get pushed out by WRPS on YouTube, and we'll put it out on our social media as well. I signed on to an additional opioid settlement set of documents. As we talked about before, while we were very disappointed in that first round, there are going to continue to be more and more settlements that are reached, and this is all additional funding that's going to come into the town. So the documents that I just signed was for a manufacturer called Allegran, also CVS, Teva, Walgreens, and Walmart. So there will be more funding coming in to the town, and as we've talked about before, it's still on my list. I didn't mention it tonight, but I am putting on the warrant with your support, creating a opioid special purpose stabilization fund. So we'll move all these funds into that, and then we'll work collaboratively with stakeholders like the two chiefs in the back, as well as others, to find good uses for substance abuse prevention and treatment. And it's sort of interesting, there was a report that was sent to me, a request to file a report from the federal government about uses of your opioid settlement funds, and we haven't used any yet. But it was particularly targeted at any use of the funds that are not related directly for substance abuse prevention and treatment. And then there's all kinds of explanations and documentation and things like that, because again, the intent of these funds is for that use. And so I think segregating it, not just lumping it in with the general fund, and will be the way to go. Next, I wanted to mention that Tiffany Needham, Highway Superintendent Dave Taylor, and I met with Mr. Grass from Dyer Street. He was in at our last meeting. We met with him last week. We had a great meeting with him. Chief Zioli agreed that he and his officers would help with some parking enforcement from some contractors and where they've been parking. So we appreciate their support. And a lot of it, Dave Taylor just had to explain that when this occurs throughout the state and probably throughout the country, where, you know, the end of your lawn, we often feel like that's our lawn, but it might not actually be your property. That road layout is generally wider than the pavement. And in some cases, like Dyer Street, it's an even wider format. So much of the impacts are going to get, I shouldn't say much, all of the impacts are going to get fixed. Once the road work is done, the infrastructure's improved, the stumps will be pulled out, new trees will be planted, and Dave Taylor is on it. But those types of things can't happen yet because it's winter and it's not the right time to do that work. The plants are closed. So some of it was us listening and understanding what their concerns are, because it's always hard to live next to a construction site, and totally empathize with that. And again, the police are going to try to help with parking, and Dave is going to continue to bird dog the contractors to make sure that all the replication of any impacts, ruts on lawns and landscaping and things like that are done. So we appreciate Mr. Grass's patience. Next, on the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which we just alluded to earlier with the town meeting warrant and the cemetery commissioners, just continuing down that path, I had a meeting with the Hanover Department of Public Works recently, as they're going to be helping us with the administration of the cemetery. All the records, which are in good order, but all of them are on paper. Very old 3x5 cards or 4x6 cards, just huge trays of them. And the Hanover DPW has their own computer system that they sent up, so everything's digital. So these cards need to be digitized. And I've checked, and there's different companies that can do that for us, that even specialize in cemetery scanning, but you have to literally box it up and send it out west or somewhere. And was not comfortable with the only set of these documents doing that. And also you need someone that knows how to read them, knows how to categorize them and label them, and et cetera. So I say all that because right now, as we speak, and Lori actually, and Mike, I think you might have met her as well, in my office, Pamela Ryan from our Historical Commission has volunteered to scan and digitize all these documents for us. And it's an unbelievable help. I mean, she's really going above and beyond, again, volunteering at no charge. And I think a main reason she's helping the town, but also this is a historical cemetery, which is one of the reasons why we're going to be recommending the town meeting to accept it. So I say all that because I just want to publicly thank Pamela Ryan, and I'll thank her again when she's done for all her work helping us. Two last ones. One is, we were talking about union contracts a moment ago with police patrol. I am pleased to announce that we have reached an agreement with the Police Superiors Union, the other police union. I didn't go over the details of it tonight because they haven't formally ratified it yet, but we've signed the MOU. And again, it's very similar to the other police and the fire contract. Getting out of civil service and the education incentive is the main part. And then lastly, I participated in a Zoom meeting last week with Tom Hickey from South Shore Tech and all the other towns in the region. They are going to be requesting all towns, excuse me, all towns to update their regional agreement to accept a new town, to accept Marshfield coming in, which will be a good thing. That's going to add more students. That's also going to help spread the cost. So I think financially it will make sense for the towns to add a new large town coming in. So Mr. Hickey, the superintendent, I've tentatively penciled him to come into your next Board of Selectmen meeting on March 7th so he can go over it in detail. Because it's not just as simple as saying, you know, add Marshfield. When these kinds of regional agreements get updated, the state requires other kind of housekeeping things that get done. So there's a number of other changes, and he'll go over all of that in detail and answer any questions you have at your next meeting. And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda, Selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen, and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Selectperson Childs?
Yeah, there was a Facebook poll, I think, put up by Robert Whitman recently about what are the main concerns and the main changes that people want to see in town. Number one was the water, and number two came in as revamping uptown. When I drive through different towns in the state, cities, towns in the state that are cute and thriving and successful, I don't see a lot of empty businesses. I see forward-thinking businesses like maybe pickleball courts, things like that. But what they do have as well is a DPW and a town planner. And that's kind of rolling the ball forward. Another thing that rolls the ball forward, I think, and what you had mentioned before, to your point, is just the optics of having our board named the Select Board rather than the Board of Selectmen, which is rather outdated. So my question is, do we have to wait another year for that to get on next year's warrant for town meeting? And, you know, I know that it's an issue that has come up with the Charter Review Committee, and they, suggest that we change it and we vote to put it on. But I'm wondering if we can work this year collaboratively to maybe get it on for this year, just for optics.
Yeah, sure. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, that was an item that I mentioned at their first meeting a month ago. So they have, next week, they have a meeting, and they're meeting monthly. So next week will be their only meeting before the warrant closes. So I think if you want, and personally I support it, and I imagine all 5 members of the board supports it. So you could certainly send them a letter, or we could send them an email saying the Board of Selectmen, you know, strongly supports this change, and we'd encourage you to consider something like that. It could be relatively simple, just having town council go through the whole charter and replace every selectman with select board. It could be that simple, but it could also be a lot more complicated than that because of all the other connections the charter has with bylaws and regulations. And so there could be problems if we change the charter, but we don't change everything else that it references. So that's something that we can look at their next meeting and have town council review. And if it's something you guys are on board, and that committee's on board, and town council says, yeah, we can change everything that has to be done, and we can get that language done in time to put it on the warrant, no problem.
Okay.
I think that's possible, but I just want to prep you that it's also possible that they might say, there's not enough time to do it right, and you don't want to do it half right, because then you're going to open yourself up to legal issues. So if you're all on board, I would suggest maybe authorize, just by a consensus, to have Lori send the Charter Review Committee a note saying that you urge them to really strongly consider it for this town meeting, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you.
You get my support.
Awesome, thanks. You good? Awesome, thank you. Done.
Okay. Thanks, Lori. Vice Chairman Nyman.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly announce that I will not be seeking re-election to the Board of Selectmen this upcoming April. It was not a decision that was taken lightly. It was a hard decision, bittersweet decision, but it's something that I need to do to fulfill my professional career, where I'm at right now, to move forward with my career. So just want to thank the residents of Rockland for putting your trust in me over the past almost 5 years. It's been one of the greatest honors of my life and something I will cherish for a long time. So just wanted to let everybody know since you were all asking, and I was not officially in or out, but tonight I am officially not seeking re-election. So I don't think there are many contested races on the ballot, unfortunately. I would encourage others to maybe step up and run if they were thinking about it. You can always do a write-in ballot. So with that, that's all I got.
Well, Kara, thank you very much. Thank you for your dedication over the last 5 years and the last 4 as vice chair.
Yep.
Is it 4?
Just about.
Just
Yeah.
about, yeah. All right, well, I appreciate you. You've always been there to answer whatever questions that I've had, so appreciate your time, and I appreciate you stepping up when the town needed you the most at that point, too.
Thank you.
So with that, I don't have anything for my closing comments. I think I talked enough during the meeting, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a
Second.
motion, I have a second. All those in favor, Selectperson Childs?
Yep.
Vice Chairman Nyman?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you, everyone. Good night.